Hi there, I'm Sian Reeves. Welcome to Who Cares? This is a YouTube channel for you, real people and professionals, to discuss caring, a chance to be listened to and to be heard, to share some small victories, some little wins. 600 people a day are leaving their work to become carers. 1 in 5 of us are doing over 50 hours a week of unpaid care, which equals £184 billion a year, which is a whole other unfunded NHS. Who cares? I do. Today I'm talking to Clara Hebblethwaite from the Dementia Experience in Ashford, Kent. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Sian. How are you?
Oh, I'm really well. Thank you for joining me today.
Yes.
We're going to talk about your mum, and we're also going to talk about your wonderful, can I call it a club?
Yes, yeah, it is like a club, yeah, or a gang, or any of the above. It's good, yeah.
Yeah, this amazing thing, massive thing that you've set up in Ashford in Kent. And as you know, this is a space for people who are caring or have been carers to share their small wins and things not to do as well. So if we can go back in time a bit about your mummy. You mentioned to me when I was on the phone to you ages ago that she was a universal aunt herself, and that was somebody that you brought to her as well. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, it was amazing, actually. We kind of did full circle in the sense that it's a group that has been set up, I think, for at least 50 years, if not more. And their website is wonderfully old-fashioned. And it's basically a group of women mostly who do odd jobs and supportive roles in households. So from helping kind of organise a dinner party to taking a child on a train on a long journey up to Scotland or something like that. And they are just, kind of companions, supporters, friends for families. And I think they started in London, and it could be that they've now got tentacles elsewhere. But my mum, when we lived abroad and she was a diplomat's wife, and whenever she came home to England and she wanted to just get a few pennies together and have a bit of a mission, she would sign up as a kind of agent for the Universal Aunts, and she would then get sent on little missions. So I remember her telling me how she'd done this long train journey with a sweet little boy who was off to visit his granny up north. And, she accompanied him, and it was just a sweet way of spending the time and getting a few pennies together as she did it.
And this is something that you thought, we can use that once you started to know that your mum needed a bit more time, people spending time with her at home.
Exactly. And I think she was so anti the idea of a carer coming in. She was anti the idea of being looked after, or of some kind of bustling, bossy person taking control. And I think particularly with dementia, when you know that you're losing control, and it can be really terrifying, you're holding on for dear life. So the idea of someone coming in a starched uniform with a clipboard just doesn't necessarily suit everyone. And so for her, we knew we had to find some tricks and some ways of making it more acceptable for her to kind of throw the front door open. And we tried all sorts of other ways. And I remembered these Universal Aunts, and yes, they can organise for someone to come and be a companion. And even if it's sitting and watching Downton Abbey together, or going for a stretch around the block, or just having a good laugh, and they would present as a friend would, in their home clothes, often juggling their own families and jobs around this role. And they would dedicate 2 or 3 hours to her. And we started just once a week. And then actually she became such friends with the final Universal Aunt that she had that, she would come much more often, and often just pop by if she was on her way to Sainsbury's. So it was brilliant for Mum. And it was so lovely for us daughters to know that there was someone keeping an eye. And it was something that we knew that Mum would be accepting of.
Did she understand she was getting the same person of herself who had been nice to someone else?
She definitely knew the Universal Aunt's name, and I think she felt almost like she was still a Universal Aunt, and she was almost having a sort of works do, getting together with other ones. She did understand, and she much preferred that concept than any other.
Than a care. And so when that sort of it increased and you and your sister realised you've got to do something a bit more, how difficult was that?
really tough, really tough. We did find agency carers, and we progressed from sort of daytime agency carers to nighttime ones. And she really, really kind of fought against it. And we would find it, despite there being an agent as a kind of middleman, we found it really stressful because we would often get phone calls from the carer. Sometimes, late in the evenings after a long day. I was a full-time secondary school teacher, and they would be asking me what I thought they should do. And I would just be so frantic, in my own world, and knowing that mum was, quite a long way away. She was in Clapham whilst I was down in Dover at the time. And it was actually more stress than her kind of almost being on her own to have to manage the carers who were there, in a professional capacity. And despite lots of them being, gorgeous people who were there for all the right reasons, Mum just didn't want strangers in her house. And definitely overnight, she found that really tough to get her head around. And she would be frightened. And I think because they presented in this professional way, it was not anything that she'd been used to before. And it reminded her that she needed help. And that's just the worst thing in the world. It's like someone saying SOS, and then suddenly, it's a kind of overkill of care. When actually all she needed was a hug and a bit of reassurance from someone that didn't necessarily have their head on one side. I think you can often feel so much worse when people are saying, poor you, rather than, you got this, let's give you some armor, let's have a giggle, let's get distracted by the birds tweeting outside or whatever it is. And I think, finding her a kind of package of care was proving really tough and almost exacerbating, whatever the word is.
Exacerbating
the situation. And so, we looked at care homes almost immediately after that chapter.
And so, of course, finances as well is a terrible problem, and whether to sell the house and how to afford this. Even like you're talking about overnight care, my friend's just taken out a £50,000 loan to pay for both her parents to have 24/7 care, which seemed to be cheaper than a care home.
Yes, that's the thing. The care homes are just nuts. It's more than the Ritz, It's astronomical, and families, because they're in the thick of things, because they're in a jungle of stress and worry, and they're living, day to day, they can't think outside the box. They find it really tough to find alternatives and to think creatively about their situation. And, they're paying so much emotionally to have to pay financially on top. It just feels like the cruelest kind of combination.
And this journey with your mum led you on to making this dementia experience group, didn't it?
Yeah.
And do you offer advice as well as lovely tea, tea parties and singing things and flower arranging? Do you offer advice as well to the carers?
Not advice, no, because the carers, are people like us who have lived full lives. They know how to love and they know how to live. And it's not advice. It's more sort of gentle guidance, gentle lifelines, gentle redirection. We know of, lovely local carers that we can not recommend, but give the contact details for, and then it's up to them to follow up. But just a bit of respite for their busy brains. Many of them have been shouldering it for so long. Particularly, we've got quite a few wives in our groups who have been looking after their husbands, for nearly 10 years, some of them. And so it's a way of rejuvenating them, whatever the space is that we provide, whether it's one of our groups or a hug in a mug coffee morning when we just really allow everyone to offload. We want them to leave the coffee shops feeling stronger for it and feeling like they've got a couple of top tips of local lifelines. They can kind of find direct support. But the essential bit of our service, as it were, is that they feel like they're part of a gang. They're not on their own with it. They're not isolated any longer, often with family and friends who don't know how to respond to someone with dementia in their family. They turn away. They don't feel like they know what to say or how to react. Whereas we all get it. We all get it. And we want people to feel uplifted after time spent with us. So that they can take on the next chapter. And if it's stuff like finding out about CHC funding, for example, in order to be able to afford those care homes, we'll do a bit of research for them. We'll give them our experience of CHC funding. We might possibly steer them towards a solicitor that could give them, some solid advice. But we're really there just to say there are options. This is not the only way. And as soon as you realise you've got options, as soon as you reach out and ask people questions and find out what other people's scenarios are, you feel better for it.
Yeah. Because there's things like Music for Dementia, isn't there, which I know I found you via, which is a brilliant radio station where you can plug into the decades that you might like. And it seems like the real winners are the people who've found the time to. Like I met this amazing lady whose husband has dementia. I met her at the Green Letter Day for a dementia adventure at Lord's Cricket Ground, and he used to be a cricketer. And she's found all these clubs that she can go to, which makes her feel less alone. Organised holidays where you've got support around you, you've got helpers who can sit with your loved one while you go to the toilet at least, and all of that really helps. But I noticed your club, you've got the activities like 4 times a week. I mean, that's so if you did that 4 times a week, I know I would feel better. I know I would feel assisted, helped. I've got somewhere to dress up, just put a nice top on and come out and know that there's going to be people there to keep an eye on my loved one.
Yes.
For me, and talk to other people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think feeling connected, I never really understood the words connection and community. I just sort of thought they were kind of buzzwords. But when you see them in action, when you see those nuggets of joy between individuals, whether it's 2 family members connecting over something, and slightly rolling their eyes or having a giggle because something's happened that they've both lived with or they've both experienced in their own situations, or someone with dementia coming to life, literally coming to life in a club that has some live music that really makes them feel like they can contribute, that they can dance, that they can sing along to, that people are really making them feel seen. That's just priceless. And we hear from the family members that vibe stays in their system for the rest of the day. If one of the chaps, for example, Dieter, if he sung a gorgeous German Christmas carol, and he was brought up in Germany, and the German comes to his mind before any English does now, it's extraordinary. And his wife says, after choir, which he has never been in a choir, she never assumed he would want to, sing necessarily, but because for him, it's a gathering. It's like a drinks party. He recognizes us and he's, greeted with a warm hug. And, we buoy him. We admire his new haircut. We tell him he looks so smart. All of these things, which are tiny to do, but are so meaningful to him. She, the wife, is blown away because he'll give her a wink during one of the songs that we sing. And she's like, he hasn't flirted with me in more than 30 years, regardless of the dementia. She's finding it so connecting. And he's then calmer for the rest of the day. He's, more chilled. He's not as frustrated because there's been a real life experience. And it's when you walk into a room and the dementia choir is going on, you don't know who's got dementia and who hasn't. It's a level playing field and we're all in it together. It's not a drop and go, because then you miss out on the good stuff. You miss out on those nuggets of joy that you hold as a carer for the rest of the day or the rest of the week. And you remind yourself exist when stuff is unraveling and when stuff is stressful and upsetting and difficult to deal with.
And of course, music is proven, isn't it, to release speech, to release memories, to form connections. And it often I'll go along and do a sing along. And then when I leave, that's when they're all chatting, because it's livened up the brain. It's made a serotonin relaxing situation. It's brought back a comfortable space where they feel that back door opens and something can come through, which is music is incredible. But can we go back a little bit to, because your mum sounds so self-driven and independent. And you did say to me a while ago she worked for Shelter and all these brilliant charities herself. So was she a problem to get into the nursing home because of a strong mind?
Absolutely. Yeah. She went in like a wild animal, I'm afraid. And it was really tricky to witness.
Were they a good, had you found a good place? Had you done lots of research?
We'd looked at quite a few, yeah. And because I was a school teacher, I sort of treated it like kind of school visits. I wanted to, go straight to the staff room and pick up the vibes. And what I learned actually is, regardless of the glossy magazine and the kind of marketing and the shiny, surfaces and comfortable looking spaces, it was actually all about the heart and soul. And in a way, the scruffier, the better, in a way where the carers are just authentically squidging people's hands and looking at them in the eye and not just ticking their tasks off a list. That's what made the most sense. And the place that we found eventually, we had a few kind of trials, as it were, in 2 or 3 places that just weren't a good match at all. And it could have been because of the stage that Mum was in her dementia, that she was seriously fighting it. Or it could have been that there just wasn't the connecting moments taking place, that there wasn't the heart and soul that she required. But eventually, when we found the care home in my own village, weirdly enough, having gone round the houses, we went all the way down to Winchester and really snazzy looking places that I was happy to be checked into. I was like, I'll come and have a lie down in one of these. And some of them are like really lovely sort of hotels or boarding schools almost, they're just great. But it wasn't working for her. So we did full circle and came back to my village care home, which I had disregarded. I just thought, no, it's not for her. It's not kind of got the vibes that we, the family, would like her to be in amongst. But actually, they had the answer. They saw Mum. They saw how frustrated she was, how upset she was. And one of the care home managers, Sharon, who was absolutely brilliant, she created a badge for Mum with her name on it, Patricia. And she was like, welcome to the team, Patricia. We're really going to value your experience in these various worlds where you've lived. And we know that you've lived in these foreign countries, and we know that you're an excellent hostess. So we're looking forward to having you on the team, and we'll see you tomorrow, first day of work. So Mum was then, this wasn't an automatic change, but it meant that she had status. It meant that she was, being kind of respected. And, I said, right, we got to go to Boots. We need to get you a new lipstick. You've got, first day at work tomorrow. So then, she was then taken,
into
through
a place.
Drama, she was taken elsewhere. And she did do meet and greet on the door with a clipboard with, the new residents coming in. Of course, she was beside the care home manager, but there she was feeling like she had purpose again. And I think that was just so clever. And it was a really good way for us, the family members, to learn that even though the place, the care home, might not be exactly what you want, it did smell, and the food was pretty gross, and the rooms weren't as shishi as some of the other ones that we'd seen. But she, the manager, understood how to deal with dementia.
How to manage her.
And
how
the
to manage your
carers,
mummy.
Yeah, they were brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
How difficult was it to move her then? You had to move her like 3 times or something to get to the honey pot. So did you have support with that, or were you literally going, this isn't working, I'm so sorry, we've got to find somewhere else?
It was hellish. And even in taxis, she was trying to throw herself out of the taxi. And I remember one taxi driver just being such a good egg. He just gave me a wink and he just locked the doors and he was like, we'll get her there, no problem at all. But we would have scenes outside care homes where there was a huge kickoff. We would have other family members looking at us like we were making completely the wrong decision, or that they were terrified that Mum was going to upset their loved one's routine. All of that. And it's your mum and you just can't bear it. But I kept thinking, it for her during that stage, it felt like she was clinging on for dear life, on the edge of a cliff. And I just had to use all of my power, not the kind of obvious love, but a love that I hadn't had to sort of dig into before, and just gently tread on her fingers so that she would let go. And actually that took almost a year really for her to settle, in the sense that I had to distance myself. I had to, protect myself and my own family as well, because there was a decision of either we all kind of go down the plug hole with mum, or we know that actually we've got to fill ourselves up so that when we do go and visit her, we're effective. And, and that took, a while for that acceptance, that level of knowing that, she was going to be different, and I was going to have to rewire my brain in almost as dramatic a form as her own brain had been rewired by dementia. And I think that's quite a big one for family members to do.
Did you have some help finding that route? How did you find that you had to dig into that different sort of love, which I presume you're talking about stern, strict sort of caring?
The toughest kind of love. Walking away when your mum is banging on the windows and she's screaming, and my son, who was only about 10 at the time, she was pulling his hand, and the care home manager was pulling his other hand, and that awful struggle. And I had to, walk away in floods of tears. But I said, here, they are the professionals. They know what they're doing, and we can, but you have to, I think we said before on the phone as well, you kind of got to go through the process to get to that point. And, I had insisted that she moved from upstairs, which was the dementia wing, to downstairs, hoping that would help. So if she was with residents that weren't living with dementia, and I painted her bedroom like Farrow and Ball, and I got new carpet, and we put all of her goodies from her smart house in Clapham into it. And, friends, and there was a fridge full of chocolate and 0% wine, and friends were like, oh my gosh, this is like an Airbnb. I would happily stay the night. And even that, mum rejected. She still couldn't settle into that space. So I sort of knew from that experiment that it wasn't the environment that she was rejecting, it was the dementia. She just really, really was fighting having that level of disability.
And there are different drugs and things that that are being developed all the time, aren't there?
Yeah.
So are you still taking her to the doctor? Because you're quite young, so she must be quite young. Are you still taking her to the doctor to try things, or
No, because I think most of the drugs that are effective you need to take quite early on in your dementia journey.
Right.
But the trouble with that is often people are reluctant to go for a diagnosis because they don't want that definition. They don't want that label, understandably, when things aren't so gorgeous on the other side of having your dementia diagnosis. So part of the reason of setting up the dementia experience was like, let's make life so glorious for those living with dementia, whether it's them directly or their family members as well. Let's make those clubs and those gangs and those activities so cool and fun that you would want to go there without dementia, that you would happily buy a ticket to go to one of those things because they are the answer. So instead of kind of fighting dementia, I'm really trying, because it is often such a, it's a jug with a hole in it, and you can really invest all of your energy, all of your emotion, all of your time, and still, I'm afraid, it will march on. So it's not that I'm against medication or against research, because of course they're critical. But as a society, we've got to adapt our approach and be open to the idea of accepting a scenario that is out of our control, and being very non-Western about our approach to death, being very bold and brave, looking at those with dementia in the eye, holding on to their hands, making them feel seen and loved, and allowing the family members respite, which in its ultimate form is something that can recharge them and allow them to continue with that day or that week or that month, so that, eventually they can come to that level of acceptance themselves.
You're listening to Who Cares with me, Sian Reeves, and I'm talking to this week's guest, Clara Hebblethwaite, from the Dementia Experience in Ashford, Kent. If you're enjoying listening to Who Cares, please subscribe, and if you want to get in touch and share your story, please do. I'd love to hear from you. And you did a course, didn't you, to learn more about how to deal with it? Did you have to pay for that?
No, it was free. I think they said I had to pay maybe 60 quid if I didn't complete it within a certain amount of weeks. So that was
Yeah.
quite a good incentive to sort of go for it. And it was brilliant because at that point, I just wanted knowledge. I just wanted some kind of power, some kind of armor to know as much about dementia as possible. And it was just after I'd crowdfunded for the Dementia Experience kind of virtual bus to come to the care home that Mum was in. And I just found that virtual experience of dementia so interesting that and as a Bossy Boots teacher, I knew I could just sort of package up the training that takes place after that 7-minute experience of dementia that they give you on the bus. I then wanted to spread that training into schools, into other care homes, and do it, for free for family members, so that they too could just feel a bit more powerful with the knowledge that those sorts of courses give you.
Yeah. And have you got like some top tips that you might, things you might have done differently, things like this CHS funding thing?
Yes.
That's valuable, I think,
Yes.
isn't it?
The continuing healthcare is really, really valuable to know about. They make it unbelievably difficult to get hold of, but the NHS, it's one of their best kept secrets. That's how it's kind of known. There is a pot of gold. There is money for those who are living in a situation where their needs cannot be met any other way other than via 24/7 care or some kind of hardcore package of care at home, or indeed in a care home. And I fought for it for my mum and managed to get it so that her care home fees are covered. And it's tricky, but it's not impossible.
And the journey that you went on by, it sounds to me that even though that was difficult to move her from care home to care home to care home, at least you then found your right route. It's almost like with schools, with children, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can start them at one and you know that it's not right and it's not working, and then you move them away. So even though that must have been horrifically extra work, it seems like it was the right route. Yes. Although you wouldn't recommend it.
No. And again, like with parenting, you kind of got to go with your instincts, and there is that tough love stuff that will make transitions tricky. But I think where there's a will, there's a way. Definitely kept me going, that sort of phrase, and not taking no for an answer. If there was a closed door, if a manager, couldn't, for whatever reason, put mum on a waiting list or whatever it was, I would just call again and hope that someone else picked up and get mum on the list, So I think that level of persistence, wanting to make sure that you get the right scenario for your loved one, but also being flexible when it doesn't work out, not putting all your eggs in that basket, so that you can go with the flow. Like, that's the key, I think, to all of it, going with whatever the scenario is that is presented, having that flexibility, not holding on so tight that then you're unable to shift, frame of mind or geographically if you need to.
Yeah, because you can imagine you could have stuck with that first place and gone, it's me, I'm the one that's not feeling that it's right. She's in a good place, it's good, it's right, and you'd have been seeing her still unhappy, and you'd have been yourself unhappy. So flexibility and geographical change is very key, isn't it?
Yeah.
And does she come to your club, your mum?
She has done, She's come to the choir quite a few times. Yeah, she absolutely loves it. Yeah.
And she's happy now and really close to you then?
Yeah, I mean, it's so tricky though, because that is often the first question her family or friends ask me is, how's mum? Is she happy? And it's like, it's so difficult to say. Like, she is in the moment when she sees me, but sometimes the moment can only be a minute or two, sometimes a bit longer. Now she's got to the stage where it almost gets too much for her. So she very much sort of gives me a sign to say, okay, time to go home now, because for her, she needs to process and digest the interaction that's taken place. But we have amazing times. I take a speaker with me and just put on whatever, makes sense in that moment. And we listen to like Sonny and Cher, the I Got You Babe song the other day. And she literally, I think she must have fallen in love to my dad, I mean, with my dad, to that track, because her face, she couldn't get over it. She was just so thrilled, beyond thrilled to hear it again. And then she kind of went off into the horseshoe of other residents who were sort of, you know, sitting and chilling. And she wanted to perform it. She wanted them to feel the love and to enjoy, you know, she expected everyone to kind of clap at the end. It was just amazing. Really, really powerful stuff.
See, that's great that you know that you can take some music. I said this to one of my drivers the other day, whose mum's not very well, and I said, take your laptop, go into this MD4 radio, or Tony Blackburn's Golden Hour is fantastic.
Perfect.
I mean, even I love his stuff because it's from when my mum was washing up, you know. So it takes you back to this lovely time, and it just opens things. But even just to take a radio and put it on and play some music that they will remember will start the speech.
Yes.
So that's so bold of you and brave of you to do that and to understand that as well. Otherwise, you'd sit there and not be able to speak.
That's the thing. So often you see the family member holding on to their loved one's hand, and I get it, and they're just in tears. And of course, no conversations taking place, very little connection taking place, because it just feels so entirely miserable. But if you go in with, you know, your loved one's favourite bits, whether it's a fizzy Fanta or a delicious Jaffa cake or a bit of music, you know, immediately the pressure's off a conversation, the pressure's off normal, as it were, in inverted commas, interaction. And, you know, when I see mum, I'm not seeing mum as me, Clara, the daughter, coming to see her mum, who she really loves. I'm thinking now I'm very much beyond a daughter. I'm much more, you know, her best friend and sometimes her worst enemy and her mum sometimes. You know, all of those roles get all muddled up. And luckily, we were sort of taught how to do a lot of charades as kids. You know, you just kind of have to just act and go with and hold on to that good stuff, because the rest of the day you can feel pretty miserable after seeing your mum in a situation like that. But you've got a little video maybe of you connecting with that gorgeous song that she might have had at her engagement, or you can send it to a friend who hasn't seen your mum for a while and they're like, oh, well done, like, isn't mum really doing well? So you feel proud and pleased with that. So I think for all of the dementia journey so far, and it's been from start to finish probably 6 or 7 years, and who knows how much longer, you know, it could be the same again. You've got to be able to sustain momentum. You know, it is a marathon as a family member. So you've got to recharge your own batteries, hold on to the nuggets of joy when you say cheers with your cold fizzy Fanta or squidge their hand when you're dancing, and know that the storm will pass. But whilst you're in that storm, reach out, like find those other good eggs. They're not necessarily your mates, you know, from uni or from school or from workplace. There'll be people that you'll find, you know, in groups like the Dementia Experience, who you cannot believe you're bonding with in such an intense way, because all of you have got your hearts on your sleeves, all of you are vulnerable, all of you have been in the trenches, and you really need each other. And it keeps you going, it really does.
Do you think, you know, having gone through this with your mum, and she was such an amazing, you know, worker for everybody else, would you, and you seem to be this, you know, force of change, and, you know, it's amazing what you've done, created this hub, this group. Do you think we should sign something when we're like 65 to say, if I get to that point in my life, I would like an out? We have such an ageing population, don't we? You know, my mum's neighbour lived till she was 102 the other day, and she'd just had enough. She hated it. She couldn't see, she couldn't hear very well. You know, she'd had enough. And she didn't have dementia, but she was starting to forget things because everything's starting to break down. And she was someone who'd saved lives in the Second World War. You know, she was in the army. Yeah. Do you think something like that should be brought in for us? We're the next generation of this.
Yeah, yeah.
We
And
could live till we're
that's
110.
yeah, I know. So again, another reason to set up pink, electrifying, dementia style parties so that we can tap into them when we're in our 80s and 90s. But I think, yeah, I've always had a problem with kind of preserving life at all cost. There has to be a sort of limit to that. And, during lockdown, I was kind of frantic about the idea of, you know, kind of preventing people from living in order to save them from dying. Like, I think we do have a lot to learn from Sri Lanka, from the East, where there's more of an acceptance of death, that it's not all about, it must be in the West for us, in England particularly, we are fearful, we don't talk about death. And yet, in order to understand life, we've got to talk about death. Like, how
Yeah.
can we be at our best and at full capacity and really living in the moment if we don't get our heads around what happens when we die, and what the feelings are around that?
Or
It's,
what we need in place.
yeah,
We need like communities where
yeah,
there's young and old together and that we
yeah,
help each other.
yeah, yeah,
We're so lonely. You see old people coming out of huge houses on their own, doing
yes,
their shopping, going back. You think they're heating one room. They're lonely. I'm
yeah,
always trying to chat to everybody in the street. That's not enough. We
yeah,
need young people and old people mixed together.
yes. Well, exactly like the Marigold Hotel, like that, where
Yeah.
there is that communal feel, and kids will be coming and going and doing yoga with the grannies. And I mean, yeah, and the kids benefit so much as well. And actually, we've got kids coming in doing their Duke of Edinburgh with the dementia experience, as volunteers. And we're obsessed with it. That intergenerational stuff is
Yeah.
so key. Those grannies would have read to the kids. So why not the kids have a dance with the grannies? It's lovely.
Yeah,
It's really
it seems
essential.
quite a lot to achieve, doesn't it, for us in the next 20 to 30 years. But
Yeah.
that there is time to do that. A huge change needs to happen,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Because the care homes aren't what they should be
No.
right
No.
now. And as you
Yeah.
said, you mentioned something of a floor where dementia people are, and a floor
Yeah.
where, that doesn't seem right at
No.
all.
Yeah.
It's like at primary school, they have, mixed groups so that everybody, disabled children, able-bodied children, everybody's mixing together. And that's how
Yeah.
it should be, so that we
Yeah.
learn to help.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, there definitely needs to be that shift. And I think if we do it in small pockets, I think it's too easy for people to cross their arms like they used to in the staff rooms in my secondary schools, and they'd just be like, it's too difficult, it's too expensive,
Yeah.
and there isn't enough time. Those are like the key things that the sort of opposite to us use as an excuse not to be proactive. But if we just do little pockets of equivalent groups, and then be proactive in our joining of dots, and also share our practice. So often when there's good stuff going on, people are worried about treading on toes, or they might not want you to sort of replicate what they've created. But at the same time, you can't be like, don't copy my work. You have to share and allow everyone to have a go at doing the same, wherever they are. And people that have got ideas will always have more ideas. So you can't kind of copyright those. And I'm, more than happy if people would want to do a dementia experience elsewhere in England, and just get little pockets of hot pink stuff all over the country.
Yeah.
And see if that eventually, allows
Can
its own
spread.
tentacles to grow.
Yeah.
But it's setting stuff up for us, but it's also making sure that those, in their 80s and 90s now, have a golden exit. We don't want to be at their funerals and listen to, the eulogy that says, remember him or her well, and people have to rewind in their brains 10 or 15 years pre-dementia. No, remember them when they were at Dementia Choir just last week, and how hilarious they were, how charming they were, how gorgeous those moments were together. Love them and live with them during their dementia stage, not necessarily having to eradicate it from our memories and hope that bit didn't really take place. It did take place, and it's part of their story. And the way that they are dying, very sadly, with their dementia is teaching us lots so much about how to live. It's been the biggest lesson for me and my family, thanks to Mum. And if we don't take her lessons forward, then her legacy will be very different. Whereas when I say to her, look, I've got these posters for these activities that we're doing, will you help me hand them out? You know, it's thanks to you that we're learning about dementia. Her little face lights up. She's like, thank goodness, it's not just wasted. This experience is something that needs to be, you know, shared with others so that other people will slice their experience in a different way, in a less traumatic way.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you're giving her that legacy. And I can't wait to come and see your wonderful, well, all the clubs. I want to come to all of them. But
Brilliant.
thank you so much for talking to me today. And I can't wait to come and see you.
Me
Thank
too.
you.
Can't wait
Thank
to
you,
see you.
Clara. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.